Hi, my name is Anak Sarah Anak Perempuan Sumban with metric number 293168. Today, I'm going to present about the background of George W. Bush administration in United States. George W. Bush, whose full name is George Walker Bush, was born on 6 July 1946 in New Haven, Connecticut, United States. George W. Bush was the eldest of 6 children of George H. W. Bush and Barbara Bush. His father, George H. W. Bush, was the 41st President of United States, and while his grandfather, Prescott Bush, was one of the senators from Connecticut, U.S. since 1952 to 1963. The younger Bush spent much of his early years in Texas Midlands and Houston, and had attended Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts in 1961 to 1964. Bush successfully completed his studies at Yale University and earned his special degrees in history in 1968. Then, he furthered his studies at Harvard Business School and had earned his master in 1975 from Harvard Business School. Bush made his political debut in 1977 by running an unsuccessful campaign for the House of Representatives. Later, he contributed to his father's successful 1988 presidential campaign and worked as a speechwriter and counselor to him as president. Following that, Bush put together the partnership that eventually bought the Texas Rangers baseball team in 1989. Bush later was elected governor of Texas in 1994, and from 1995 to 2000, he held office for 2 terms. On November 3, 1998, he won the re-election, making history by becoming the first Texas governor to be elected to 2 consecutive 4-year terms. He had directed the U.S. reaction to the September 11 terrorist attacks in 2001 and started the Iraq War in 2003 while serving as the country's president at the same time. George W. Bush became the first person to be elected president since Benjamin Harrison in 1888 despite losing the national popular vote after narrowly defeating Vice President Al Gore in one of the most contentious and close elections in American history in the year of 2000. Bush then promoted a number of domestic policy initiatives such as No Child Left Behind Act, which intended to raise academic standards. In order to boost economic growth, he also introduced tax cuts. Additionally, he signed the Medicare Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act into law, establishing a prescription drug benefit for Medicare beneficiaries. And after leaving office in 2009, Bush concentrated on writing and speaking in front of crowds. He has published a memoir titled Decision Points and has been active in a number of charitable causes, most notably those supported by George W. Bush Presidential Center, which advocates for initiatives in the fields of healthcare, education, and veteran support.
Assalamualaikum and good morning. My name is Asnira binti Dullah. My metric number is 293034. The invasion of Afghanistan under the President George W. Bush administration began on the 11th September 2001 when the terrorists attacked the United States. Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, made an assault and being hostage by the Taliban authority in Afghanistan at the time. In addition, on October 7, 2001, less than a month after the 9/11 attacks, the United States launched Operation Enduring Freedom with the help of its coalition. The operation's main objective was to demolish Al-Qaeda and depose the Taliban from power. Hence, the invasion began with airstrikes against Al-Qaeda and Taliban targets, followed by the deployment of ground soldiers to assist the North Alliance of Afghanistan opposition forces. Early December 2001, the Taliban had lost control of major cities including Kabul. The US invaded Afghanistan after 9/11 to fight against Al-Qaeda, but the long conflict and challenges in stabilizing the country have causes controversy and criticism. The US invaded Afghanistan to fight against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, aiming to dismantle their infrastructure and eliminate a safe haven for terrorists. It marked a shift in U.S. foreign policy towards a proactive approach in combating global terrorism. The invasion of Afghanistan aimed to overthrow the Taliban regime, establish a new government, and create a stable country, but it faced challenges in fighting governance should driven by capable security forces, resulting in high costs and casualties. And last, the invention also involved intelligence sharing and cooperation with international partners to track down terrorist suspects.
16 years ago, in 2003, on March 20, US military launched an attack on Iraq and sparked the terrible Iraq War. The Iraqi leader backed America during the Iran-Iraq War 1980 until 1988 by giving troops to Iraq and began the American military occupation of Iraq for 8 years. The Iraq War left a profound and lasting impact, not only on the entire Iraqi society, but also on the Middle East region. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed during the war in Iraq. It resulted in a severe humanitarian crisis with millions of Iraqis fleeing. The Iraq War, initiated by the imperialist United States and its allies, had nothing to do with democracy or peace. The United States claims that the Iraqi government, led by Saddam Hussein at the time, possessed a weapon of mass destruction, the WMD. Saddam Hussein's allegations are developing weapons of mass destruction as a threat to his neighbors and the world. As a result, the United Nations established UN MOVIC to track down destruction weapons in Iraq. Unfortunately, the organizations did not find any destructive weapons in Iraq even after the previous US attack on Iraq. The United States also accused Saddam Hussein in Iraq of supporting and protecting the terrorist group of Al-Qaeda. The accusations, however, have no clear and firm evidence. This is because, in fact, Al-Qaeda in Iraq is only active after the American military inventions to counter American military terrorism. In 2004, Saddam Hussein's military prisoner in Abu Ghraib prison was captured by the American army and imprisoned and tortured in an immoral way until America got accusations around the world. Later, Saddam Hussein continued to hide while still at war with the US military. The American-Iraq War, launched by the United States in 2003, was an invention based on lies, so that America was criticized by the people of the world. This is not regarded by the United States, but the US government has described Iraq under Saddam Hussein as a dangerous state before launching an attack on it. After scattering Iraq, some analysis disclosed the American target of attacking Iraq because of the destructions of property in Iraq was not described as a war against Saddam Hussein's government alone, but America had its own interest in this attack. During Saddam Hussein's reign, he was an important leader in advancing Iraq's economy until the oil discovery in Iraq in 1980 by the American President Jimmy Carter. He also said that US would use military power to protect its national interests in Iraq. In 1980, Iraq was the world's largest oil producer by occupying the third ladder in the world non-crude oil reserve. This led to the US willingness to monopolize oil in Iraq. The US influence on the oil-rich countries in the Middle East region became the focus of the US government after the World War II. Control over oil and ensuring that the oil-producing country is subject to the imperialist will of the United States became the US government's strategic policy to secure its global influence. In 2007, the US government attempted to force the Iraqi government it supported to pass a hydrocarbon law partly drafted by the Western oil industry, with the aim of creating the most corporate-friendly conditions for foreign private investment, in monopolizing the oil industry in Iraq. However, the oil law was strongly opposed by the public and eventually could not be passed in the parliament led by Saddam Hussein. The US wants to overthrow Saddam Hussein government because it's not in line with American desire for oil administrations in Iraq. In 2006, Saddam was arrested by the US military and discussed in court. Saddam Hussein was sentenced to death on his charge. Muslims should feel even more humiliated because George Bush and Tony Blair were responsible for the deaths of more than 1 million innocent people in Iraq during their attacks and conquests on Iraqi soil. Many evidence and witnesses indicate that the US military and its allies have acted cruelly beyond humanitarian boundaries against Muslims in Iraq. Saddam Hussein was brought to the court and sentenced to hanging. The Iraq War is the third Gulf War that was initiated with the military invasions of Iraq on March 2003 by the United States of America and its allies to put an end to the Ba'ath Party of Saddam Hussein. The events of this war were both brutal and severe on both parties, and it resulted in the defeat of the Iraqi army and the deposed and executions of Saddam Hussein.
First, I will explain about Gulf War coalition. One of the most significant display of coalition building under President Bush was during the Gulf War in 1990 to 1991. After Iraq invaded Kuwait, President Bush led a global coalition to confront Saddam Hussein's aggression. He skillfully built an international alliance consisting of over 30 countries, including Western nations, Arab states, and other international partners. The coalition is diverse makeup helps secure broad support for military action and contribute to the success of the operation. Second is North America Free Trade Agreement, which also called as NAFTA. President Bush pursued economic coalition building by negotiating and signing the NAFTA agreement in 1992. The agreement aimed to promote trade and economic integration between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. President Bush engaged in extensive negotiation with the leaders of these countries, seeking common ground and addressing concerns to build a broad consensus for the agreement. Although the final approval process occurred under President Bill Clinton, President Bush's groundwork was essential to the successful establishment of NAFTA. The third and the last one is bipartisan cooperation. On the domestic front, President Bush demonstrated a commitment to bipartisan cooperation. Despite facing a divided Congress, he sought to build a coalition across party lines to advance his policy agenda. Notably, he worked with Democratic leaders such as House Speaker Thomas Foley and Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell to achieve legislative victories on issues like the Clean Air Act and the Americans with Disability Act. Overall, George Bush's presidency was marked by his ability to build coalitions both domestically and internationally. His skillful diplomacy, focus on relationship, and commitment to bipartisan cooperation enabled him to navigate complex challenges and achieve significant policy outcomes. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nur Shahida binti Roslan, 294152, and today I will present about preemption doctrine. President George W. Bush introduced the preemption doctrine, sometimes known as the Bush Doctrine, in his 2002 National Security Strategy. This policy emphasized the importance of acting ahead of time to combat possible threats to the US and its allies. The doctrine emphasized the changing nature of conflict in the post-9/11 environment, as traditionally deterrent methods were regarded ineffective against non-state actors and rogue nations seeking weapons of mass destruction. To comprehend the justification for the preemptive policy, one must first assess the geopolitical scene under the Bush administration. The 9/11 terrorist attacks highlighted the United States and its citizens' vulnerability to asymmetric threats. Non-state entities carry out these strikes, emphasizing the